everyone, welcome to Snowpal's Software Development and Architecture Podcast. We have a special guest with us today. We have Richa Bhardwaj from Delhi. With over a decade of experience, Richa has been crafting exceptional digital experiences using technologies like Ruby on Rails, React, React Native, and Node.js since 2008. Her expertise extends across the entire software development lifecycle, from establishing and managing teams to making critical technical decisions and ensuring the success of numerous projects. Richa has an impressive track record of building production ready applications, creating products from scratch, migrating existing solutions to improve performance, executing rapid transitions to modern frameworks like React and Next.js, and developing robust APIs with a keen focus on documentation and testing. Richa has led teams in various high profile projects for global clients. Today, we dive into her wealth of experience to gain insights from her journey in the ever evolving landscape of software development. So welcome, Richa. Thanks for taking the time to having this conversation.
Thank you, Krish. Thank you so much. And it's been pleasure, being part of one of your podcasts.
The topic for today is art of tech transition, a developer's dilemma, right? So just by way of introduction to folks watching this, regardless of where you're located and what aspect of software development you're working on, what your role is, it I think it's fair to say that a lot of us, when we work for a number of years, we are exposed to a fair number of technologies, right? Sometimes we go out to look for some technologies, and other times the client, the employer, the business drives those technologies. But whatever be the case, it's rare that today you find people who are working on a single programming language or technology as opposed to a wide number of those technologies, right? So we're going to talk a lot more about that. But the topic, this is a brilliant topic, right? Thanks, Richa, for actually suggesting this topic. One more time, the art of tech transition, a developer's dilemma, right? What we want to talk here in the next several minutes, an hour length here, and I'm going to be posting this as several different sessions. So definitely do check them out in sequence. I'll number them as I'm posting them to Spotify and Apple and other platforms, right? Um, what does tech transition mean? I'm going to say what it means, and I'm going to have Richa chime in and have share her thoughts. Uh, let's say we're working on a particular technology, and I'm going to take the ones we just introduced you to, like Richa, because you have plenty of experience in the space of Ruby on Rails, right? We're going to talk a lot more about that. And also in the list of things you're working on today, you work on a number of different things. But one of the other things that your technologies you mentioned was React, right? So for folks, what does tech transition mean? It means a developer has been working on a particular technology stack for a while, maybe a year, 2 years, several years, and then now they are not so much transitioning. Maybe they are in some cases, but not in all cases. Other times, you end up doing something else as well, right? You're working on Rails, and now you're like, you know what? I need to also start building these web pages, right? I'm going to be a full stack developer. You probably were already a full stack developer because you were building views on Ruby and Rails, but now it's just that you're doing it using single page applications, for instance, right? We took React as an example. So that's, and there are a number of challenges associated with such a transition. And I use the word transition loosely here. It doesn't mean the developer does not do one and jumps to doing the other. Most likely they're doing both at the same time, right? So that's just a further description to the title, which was self-descriptive enough. But given the fact that I use more words than I have to, in whatever it is that I do, I just said that in a lot more words than I should have. So just to set the foundation, Richa, you want to add something here?
Yeah, sure. So art of like art, when you talk about art, your mind generally skips the journey of the learning curve, which is the most exciting, at the same time the most y- you know w- the most fearing thing when
Right.
you're starting something new. So when you start your journey as a software professional or any professional, you know that you're going to be an intern for the first time. And because you know that everyone knows that you're an intern, it's easy for you. So there are some expectations from you as an intern that you won't be able to get things done faster. You won't be able to get everything, in a single go, and there might be delays, etc. And you
Right.
might need help from your mentors, etc. Over the time, you gain that experience. You become experienced developer or professional, and then you feel comfortable. You're comfortable in your environment of that specific tech stack, those tools, those kind of problems. And then there's a sudden disruption of something new that you need to learn, maybe for the need of your project,
Right.
or for the need of yourself, where you feel like going for a career advancement. And then you're an intern again, and you're like, now everyone knows I am not an intern anymore. I'm an experienced developer. But my goodness, I don't know this. Now I cannot tell this to the world that I
Right.
do not know this specific thing. And you now need to go through that learning curve again for something new. And now, if you learn that uh, new journey of that learning curve, that becomes an art. How
Absolutely.
to, absolutely seamlessly uh, transition yourself from being an only backend developer to full stack, or only front end developer to full stack, or only full stack to become a software architect. So if you're making that journey seamless, if we are able to learn that art, if through this podcast I'm able to share some tips and tricks that I used to I actually learned through my process. And the feedback that we get after this podcast, where we can learn something more that we don't know. So yeah, that's why I'm pretty excited about this podcast.
I think very well said, right? I'm just going to add a couple more things to you. I think what you said is spot on. I think it's continuous learning, right? You said, hey, you're an intern, you graduate, you start something new, right? You're excited. I'm going to share some examples there as well, right? And then you've done that a little while, and you feel like you have some sense of how that works, right? That technology, that stack, that team. And now something else changes, right? You mentioned disruption. I want to talk about that a little bit. There's a great, even if it's not a disruption, you know what I mean? Even if it's a reasonable, if just a shift, a reasonably small shift, right? Even if it's not like that dramatic, even if it's a small shift, you still have to make those adjustments, right? And how you react to those adjustments, it actually is a lot. It's very individual, right? I mean, it's you can't. Everyone reacts to it very differently, and we're going to talk about that in this journey, in this conversation, the set of conversations we're going to have, right? Because I've seen folks, like if you took me as an example, right? Uh, I am generally very excited about something being different, right? Just by nature, you want to see how that works, uh, and you want to feel uncomfortable when you're doing that. What I mean by that is, right, if you have a comfort zone, and I probably have to find the diagram. I don't know if you've seen the diagram, but there's a circle, a big circle, and then there's a tiny circle far away, right? And it says the big circle is where you're at as a person, right, as a professional. And then the tiny circle is where all the exciting magical things are happening, right? So you're going to have to get yourself outside this comfort zone and make a conscious effort to go towards its circle. Now, sometimes you're lucky where things change outside your control. And I say lucky because you didn't seek that smaller circle outside. The client changed, right? Or your employer is doing something different, or if you're self-employed, you've decided to build something different. So you've made those decisions. uh, how you get to the from the larger circle to the smaller one differs for each one of us. But there is also a question of whether or not you want to get to that circle at all. I want to address those types of not so comfortable questions as part of these conversations too, right? Not comfortable for us, but just not a comfortable question in general. And so I'm going to sort of play the devil's advocate every here so often, knowing Richa, right, in the capacity that we've sort of known each other. I personally feel that there is a lot of things in common, right? You have an urge to learn newer technologies, right? You don't fear putting yourself out there and saying, you know what, I'm going to try this out, even if I've never done that before. You told me many examples of cases where you had not actually you're not done React, and then you had to do something, in a project where you had switched to, and you were like, you know what, let me just give it a shot, and then you're able to just be totally fine. What if you're not that person, or what if I'm not that person, right? I want your thoughts on what do you recommend, because it's just human nature, right? Sometimes you're like, I've been doing this a bit, I have a little bit of jitters, I'm worried, am I going to be able to do that? This circle's nice and comfortable, I've been here doing this, I seem like I'm pretty good at this stuff. Why should I seek that?
Yeah, sure. What I would like to add here is, and when you were talking about my some of my previous experiences that we have discussed in the past, uh, yes, it was great to see those new results when you're trying it. That too, alone, without a mentor, without any. And when I actually learned React, like when I was transitioning myself from being only Ruby on Rails developer to learn a new front end framework. Uh, the journey was a little tough for me because there was no mentor. I was trying it out. I could see the results based on whatever, because in most of the cases, the tutorials that you get, the quick, easy tutorials to learn a new technology, they're mostly hello world kind of tutorials. So now you're able to see your results on the screen. You are doing it fine. You're able to do something complex as well after learning that hello world tutorial. But there's no one to review if you're doing it fine or not. So yes, I was able to create a React application and take it on the production. I was able to after 1 year able to create mobile applications using React Native without any mentor, any reviewer for me. But yes, definitely what I was thinking about was having someone who could review my code, who can actually go through my pull requests and suggest me this could be better.
Better.
This is absolutely not the way, telling me there itself. And that would have made my journey easier. So let's say someone is not that comfortable. And if you get a code reviewer, I guess your journey is going to be easier because now there's an expectation that this person wants me to code review, and that's because he is new. He or she might be making these specific mistakes for a technology, or these general mistakes that a
Right.
newcomer does. Once that expectation is set, you are able to make those mistakes and move forward. But if you have if you make some expectation for yourself that you cannot go uh, below this bar, you are afraid of making those mistakes. So if you stop caring about making mistakes, I'm sure that your journey will be, easier compared to, just trying alone in a
Okay.
small
So
environment.
you had a lot of good points there. I'm going to sort of take one by one, right, and talk about them, because each of them is as important as the other. I'm going to go to code reviews, but I want to call out for something here, right? Because folks watching this, right, or listening to it, in whichever mode they're actually consuming this content, the podcast, uh, so far it's been predominantly developers, right? But now the fact that I'm trying to interact with folks from different playing different roles within the space of software. My hope and belief is there's going to be a larger audience with different backgrounds as well. So in this conversation, we are talking very techno. I mean, we're going to focus on development for the most part, but I want to say that a lot of the advice and a lot of the thoughts you're sharing here are just as applicable to other roles as well, right? You just have replaced the use of the word Rails or Next.js or Node, and then use, say, Figma for a product designer, use something else for somebody else, right? But the idea is the same. I just want to make that, just state the obvious there. But you mentioned code reviews. I want to go there, but going back to my question, I just want to sort of have a closure on that, if you will, right? I say I'm in the circle, the large circle. I'm doing all right. I'm getting paid. I'm having fun. I have a great team. I'm enjoying what I do. Why should I seek that circle outside? Like, do I say I started out as a Rails developer? Uh, is Why should I ever want to learn? I mean, there are some obvious answers and not so obvious answers, right? But I want to get your thoughts on, if I was the kind of person who was like, you know what, I like Rails. I've been doing all right. It seems a market. It seems to have a market. I think Richa, you coming and advising me, Chris, you should learn this other thing, React or React Native, and I'm telling you, why should I? What would your answer be to me?
So, for sure, if you're just focused on a single technology, you'll be an expert. But at the same time, your journey might be short-lived in anything. Like it's like, I do not remember what's that proverb in English. I won't be able to explain really well there. But it's
I mean,
like,
is that in Hindi, the proverb?
yeah,
Go for it,
it's
right? Go for it.
it's
Say it.
it's Kume ka mendak, which is a frog in a well who doesn't want to come out of the
Out.
well, and
Okay.
he's like the frog is way too happy with whatever
Right.
it has. It has water in the well, and everything that it needs to live
Right.
comfortable, everything. But when you come out of that well, there are more opportunities, and otherwise your life is short lived. You just live there and it ends. There's
Right.
no cool stories around a
Did
frog.
you say it? Sorry, I missed. Did you say the whole proverb? Proverb?
Yeah, it's kuwe ka mendak.
That's it?
Yeah, it's a kind of a
No, I'm
personality
just
of.
saying it's very short. I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not like a long sentence. Okay. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
that tells that if we are very comfortable in our own comfort zone, everyone knows what that means.
Right.
That does not belong to progress. That does not belong to challenges.
So what is the
uh,
point? Let's say I'm that person. How do I tell? Because I'm asking a question with an answer, but not your answer, right? Just my opinion, which I'll share shortly as well. But I do run and work with people, run into folks all the time who have a little bit of that mindset, right? So if I were that person, where is it awakening for me? Am I like looking at news of somebody's, the market for Rails is not as great? Is that the way I go about it? Or is that something else I should look out for where I'm like, I wake up one morning, I'm like, you know what? I shouldn't be doing this anymore. I should be doing something else. What is that? Is that like a clue or
So clue could be definitely that you're working on something and you do not like it. For example, I'm a fresher. I'm working on some CRUD applications and I'm just loving it because I'm in the learning phase.
right
Now, I cannot create CRUD for the rest of my
life,
life.
right?
And if I'm doing it, I'm happy about it. I'm that frog, and I really do not deserve to be with anyone on any podcast or anywhere where people are listening to me. Does not make sense because I'm that frog. And now I feel like I'm done. Now I know what a crud is. Let's move forward. Let's move on to something else. And now I've started enjoying that. So if I'm enjoying my journey as a software developer, I guess it can never be with a single tech stack,
Right.
a single technology. Once you're done, once you're comfortable, you feel like making yourself uncomfortable by
Absolutely.
trying another proof of concept with something new that could work with at least 70% of my current knowledge, and then bringing that new 30%, which now becomes 100%. But after some time that becomes 70%, and now you want to add on something else. Like for my journey, it was 100% Ruby on Rails. Now want to try something else. I brought front end. Now I am a full stack, but I wanted to bring mobile, and these hybrid technologies are the best because I would have never thought about learning the native Android and iOS. So I was able to create production ready mobile applications by using React Native. And now I guess that time has come when, like, guess what is that word? AI.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I'm absolutely excited about, getting something else in my 70% and working on, the new tools, the new ways to work with smart web. mobile, or something else with the technology where I can put in
You know,
effort,
I know what I'm
you
going
know.
to do after the podcast. I'm going to pitch my skills to you so you'll include me in your next journey with this cool thing, right? I know what I'm going to do after the podcast. Yeah. So now during the podcast, even when we had these conversations earlier, right? Just at the personal level, and I think I mentioned this to you, and I actually told my wife as well after the first call we had. You must be a sister from a different mother because a lot of things that you've said has been literally what I've actually felt. Even I have to go find my podcast. One of the earlier ones I've actually said that I feel very uncomfortable being in a comfort zone, and I feel even when I'm not really in a comfort zone, I keep worrying if I'm actually in a comfort zone. Perhaps I've not even learned that stack well enough to qualify that as Krish being in a comfort zone, but I constantly have this fear of uh, am I doing the same thing over and over again, or is this thing being different, right? I'll give you some specific examples, right? So we went into the B2B business this year, right? We've had B2C products for a while. As I mentioned, we have this B2B APIs, and I'm going to shamelessly do some pitching along the way. Sometimes inadvertently, other times almost explicitly. This is a combination of two things, right? So the most recent APIs we built were on a different platform than the earlier ones that we had. Now, did we have to pick a different stack for building some of these later APIs? Yeah, yes and no, right? There were a few reasons. We'll go into that as we get deeper into the tech side of this conversation. But in the window we had, like I was like, hey, I want to get this thing out there in 6 weeks' time, right? Can we publish a brand new API in 6 to 8 weeks? That was the idea. Now, whatever endpoints we can implement should be something that we can accomplish within the 6 to 8 week window, right? If we cannot do that, we'll just make it release two, right? The next version of it, essentially. All of that told me that, hey, you know what? Perhaps we should pick the existing stack, right? There's lesser risks, fewer risks. We've done this. It's in production already. It's on AWS Marketplace, so there's no good reason. But there is a risk. I don't know what there's great examples and proverbs and quotes. I'll try to remember as I go, but there is a risk in not taking some risks, right? It's more risky than not taking those risks. And I'm pretty sure somebody who's a whole lot smarter than me would have said something hundreds of years ago that makes complete sense. I'm going to have to find such a quote, but this is the idea behind it, right? If you don't take the chances, those chances, you're actually taking a bigger risk. You mentioned AI, broad topic. I'm glad you mentioned that within the first 10 minutes because I feel like I have to say it 10 times in the house every day. So I don't forget that I have to do something about it the next day, for instance, right? And maybe the idea is I say it 10 times, I feel like I'm more AI equipped, but that's not true. I know that that's not true. Uh, Getting out of the comfort zone, right? We're talking about it. AI is a broad topic, right? Before we switch gears completely to that, I think I want folks to remember we are going to get to it, right? I've talked about that in one of the previous conversations as well. If you haven't checked that out, definitely check out the podcast with Migali. We talked about the from a product management perspective. We talked about AI, right? The intervention, what impact AI has on product management, for instance. So we'll come to it from a dev standpoint, but to summarize this aspect, this part of the conversation, I think both of us, I knew we would be in instant agreement, but I still want to entertain that conversation for anybody else, for folks who are watching this, where they may have this little bit of fear, right? I've not done this before. Maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe it's completely different, right? What if you're going from product management to development or vice versa, right? These are different fields. Do you feel overwhelmed that, hey, I've done one, but I've worked with folks in the team who've done the other thing, but I've not actually done it myself. Am I going to be able to do it right? You're the best judge of yourself, right? And I tell everybody I work with, I don't know if I can please you as a client, as an employer, right? Honestly, I don't even feel that that's my job. My job is to appease myself, right? Make sure I do the best to my abilities. When I go to bed, I feel like I gave it my best shot. The client being satisfied or the employer being satisfied and getting what they wanted is nothing more than a byproduct of the effort, right? That's just a byproduct, right? You're not out there trying to appease anybody one more time, right? You're like, hey, have I written the best code that I can possibly write? And then if I'm reporting to Richa, I hope that by writing the best code I could write, that Richa actually finds value in that exercise. You see what I mean when I say that?
Yeah, totally. That kind of discomfort where in your team, there's a development team, design team, DevOps team. the managers, and you're working on development, you're doing it, and for a few weeks, few months, and then you are again in the comfort zone. Now you see the DevOps team is, writing some scripts and making things easier, quicker for you, but you're not yet there. And you feel like it's code. I can learn it. And absolutely, yes, you can learn it. Um, but that's a separate, path.
Right.
Going everywhere leads you to anxiety, nothing else. So, focusing on a few things and making yourself calm, like personalities like us, with this characteristic of being enjoying being uncomfortable, could actually take us to, an absolutely different path of anxiety, imposter syndrome, which is each and everything is not in only your mind. It gets, next to the truth of your personality. If you're not controlling those emotions, not working out on those emotions, on your practices for your daily work. So yeah, decide what's your path, make your shorter goals, but trying to learn each and everything at the same time is actually nothing but killing us, and actually making us worse, not worse, making us bad in what we are actually doing right now.
Right.
So yeah, that's another small segment. I'm not sure if it's small or not. Now, I guess I've conquered that. That's why I'm calling it small.
Right.
But this is a small segment of that art of transition where you're not supposed to learn A, B, C, D till Z at the same time.
Okay, beautiful, right? Let me add to whatever you just said. Let's take an example as developers, right? Let's say we're writing code. I've seen that, sometimes I work with people who write like, say, 200 lines of code before they've run any tests on those 200 lines, right? Now, I'm not going to like whether it's test driven development, vice versa. I'm not going to those details, but I'm just saying in general, if you wrote 200 lines of code and you're testing the first 20 lines after you wrote the 200th line of code, then there is a bit of a problem, right? And why this might seem like a completely orthogonal example, but I'll tell you why I think it's related. You mentioned that, yep, you want to learn, you don't want to be in the comfort zone. It's all correct. It makes sense. But you can't be, you have to, forge a path forward iteratively, right? It's going to have to be organic to a large extent. There are 15 things happening. If somebody wants to start to learn AI, we'll come to the conversation again. But, it can and it very well will be overwhelming if you don't scope it down. Keep it small, right? Take baby steps, right? First, you got to crawl, then walk, then run, then fly, for instance, right? And I took the code example because if you wrote 200 lines of code, to me, it's kind of there is a similarity here in my mind, at least, right? And now you start debugging. If something doesn't work, it's hard to tell whether the first line is broken or the 200th line is broken, right? It makes no sense. You just wrote one too many lines. Write the 5 lines of code, bask in the glory of those 5 lines of code doing something, whatever it is that they're doing. And if you're stubbing it out, which I highly recommend, as you get to the conversation, it probably isn't even doing anything, but that's all right. If I have a stubbed out function that tells me this is what I'm promising to do, it doesn't do anything, and it compiles, or assuming a compiler a language, then you are making progress, right? Then you're less overwhelmed about the 6th through the 10th line of code you're writing. But if I wrote all of them, it's going to be a whole lot more challenging, right? So am I understanding what you're saying, Richa, correctly? Which is, yes, you should have the curiosity and inquisitiveness to learn continually and conquer your fears when it comes to going beyond what you know, but have a plan. Just don't randomly poke around. I mean, is that a reasonable summary?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Like we are definitely talking the same thing, uh maybe with different examples, but yeah, we are talking about the same thing. Have a plan. We are not everyone is reaching on Mars. That cannot be, the plan.
Right.
If you're not sure about what's the first step, making progress each and every day, that, improvement, 1% improvement every day, that rule uh, is actually a correct rule, where, you make that small progress. You're learning. You're not just this is a simple rule. You just do not fear about the mistakes that while learning, while taking that new path, and you'll be fine. And you in that journey, if you're able to include those mentors, like as I mentioned,
Right.
adding a simple exercise of code reviews, that is going to help a lot. So making mistakes, making progress, learning through the path, that is definitely going to make our journey easier.
Yeah, and then you mentioned code reviews, right? I was going to. There's a great moment. It's a great segue, I think, because to me, a sign of a good developer, a lot of this might be like stating the obvious, but having done this for a bit, you realize that some of it is obvious to some of us at some point, but not all the time to all of us at least, right? Code reviews. I my thought process or my belief was, okay, there couldn't ever be code that's pushed to production without code being reviewed, right? It's a fair thing to say. I mean, how in the world can code really make its way to production? Unless you're really getting started, you're a two people startup or one person solopreneurship. Sure, you may not have somebody to doing those reviews, but in general, you have production systems. But I've seen cases and I know large systems, right, where code review is actually not part of the process. Like as we speak in 2023, right? When I say that, does it come across as, oh my God, like I've never heard of such a thing? Or in your experience, have you seen anything of that nature as well?
Yeah, so some developers, if they're not enjoying code review, I guess they're not actually getting the real reason behind it. It's not about finding those there's this terminology in GitHub, blame. I really
Right. Right.
never actually able to understand why it was blame.
Me
uh
too. Me too. I didn't get that either. Yeah, I figured it's just, my excuse is English is not my native language. So that is my
Maybe,
excuse.
yeah, maybe we are taking it the
Right.
other way, that way. Yeah. So if you think about the real essence of code reviews, and if I share my example, I actually learned Node.js while writing code for an app that was supposed to be pushed to production environment within 1.5 months. And I was learning that technology, and my journey went smooth, really smooth, because for each and every commit, which was, I was making around 70% of code changes, maybe more than that, in each and every code review. With those changes, it got reduced to, of course, you reach that level where you feel really comfortable that yes, now it is getting approved from in a first go. And even then, you hear something from here or there that this could be improved this way. And in the end, the result, you're just surprised, like 1.5 months ago, what were you actually writing? And now, wow, this looks beautiful. I wrote it.
Absolutely right.
And
Yeah.
that feeling, that is such a cool
Totally
feeling.
right. So it makes sense. But before we dig a little bit deeper, my question was a little different. Meaning, I was trying to ask if have you had an experience in working in projects where code review was not part of the process? Because I've actually seen that, and it always perplexed me that this is even possible that you could see through code through to production without another pair of eyes or at least a couple of other pairs of eyes making its way. So I just want to get like your opinion on, have you had an experience where you've had somebody or you yourself have had to push code and deploy to production without it being reviewed in work that you've done?
Yeah. So if I, okay, let me think. From the journey where the start of the journey, um, I got really lucky that the even the training period of my first, before my first project included code reviews. So I got lucky there. And now it became a habit to me. When I reached to the leadership roles, or the tech lead roles, where I was leading the teams, I was sure I can, compromise with, s- you know, the type of, it could be merge, it could be rebase, it could be anything. Okay, we'll sort that out later. Code reviews cannot be missed. Full stop. So I never removed that part from our process. Moving forward, there were a few teams where code review, creating the pull requests was not a part. I made sure that I'm enforcing that such that if I'm new to the project, everyone knows who is working on what, so that there are less accidents when you're working on the code. And if you're jumping into an existing code base, it's always good to have another eye on your code, that you're not ruining your uh, sleep. You're not getting sleepless
Right.
nights because
Okay. Yeah.
you added something wrong.
No, makes sense, right? The reason I brought that up was if there is somebody who's watching this and you're actually pushing your code to production for whatever reason, if you don't have this other person because you're just getting started, you're the only developer who's actually building this, completely understandable, right? There's other ways to go about that, but at least it's okay. But short of that, please make sure that you actually at least have a pair of eyes, if not more. Provide feedback for the reasons that you mentioned, right, Richa? Because that is the best way to learn. Not the only way to learn, but the best way to learn. But I'll go one step further and say the way you get onboarded onto a team essentially is you want to look at previous code reviews and comments, right? To me, when I start a project work with a new client, before I even, even before we say know each other, if I spent a session or two, right? By session is like 4 hours, is how we break it down. Looking at previous code commits, PRs, pull requests, and changes, and code, comments and agreements and disagreements, you can learn plenty, not just about, that language of the stack, but about the culture of that organization. Now, as developers, we know we are very passionate, right? We are very passionate. That's just the way we roll. Code reviews can get very animated, right? But I think it's all right. It's all in good, with good intent, right? As long as you don't, hold grudges, don't get, you know what I mean? Just be civilized and be professional about it. It's
Mhm.
the idea is not to necessarily be in agreement, right? Or be in disagreement. I think the idea is to be honest, and that honesty could result in agreements in some cases and disagreements in other cases, which is completely fine as long as honesty is the driving factor. And then you figure out what you disagree about, right? And use tools like linters and everything else to actually not discuss things that you as humans shouldn't be discussing in the first place, right? So focus your code reviews on items that are more pertinent to adding value, because I've been in one too many code reviews where you're fighting over the least important things, right? It is so unimportant that you're like, you know what? Can I not let the tool make this decision, right? How should the spacing be? Where should my flower brackets be? Is it two spaces? Is it four spaces, right? And we'll go into languages and how each of them recommends it for that matter, right? So, but the long story short, take every opportunity to get reviewed. It doesn't have to be code. Could be design diagrams, right? Could be architecture diagrams, could be documents, readme files, whatever it is, right? Run books. Anything that you do, I think it's best if somebody else also is on board, right? Now, whether they are completely in agreement or not, that's a conversation for another day. But I'm just saying, repeating what you said just in different words, that just extending code review to beyond code, right? Because I don't know what, I haven't heard of the usage like document review or diagram reviews, but I think their reviews are needed for anything that's an artifact, right? Whether it's an internal
Yes.
artifact or an external artifact.
Yeah, I guess those reviews actually become meeting. I guess that's why there's no specific review process. There are no pull requests for those. But yeah, review is must. You learn more, and there's someone who is helping you to validate that you're in the right direction, and if not, you can work it out, make some better decisions, and of course after that make better products. All right.